that I probably should publish another book, which I thought about some years ago and came close to with the House of Anansi. They were interested, and I didn't really pursue it, so I think I should do that, put out one more book. So this first poem is called Veteran, and this is dedicated to my uncle, Richard. I hear snow, the sound of silence in the neighborhood, the city, the sound of my sled rolling over frozen stones at lightning speed down the laneway, my belly and chest pressed against the wooden boards of the sled my Uncle Richard made for me in the unfinished basement of my grandparents' home. I watched and waited as he shaved the wood, which fell in curls to the cement floor, watched and waited as he bent the iron runners, hammered the small nails, drilled the holes, and knotted the soft, strong rope through them. I remember this about childhood and running through the snow barefoot to escape the sting of his belt, icy pangs in my feet. I'm not remembering my transgression, but his wrath in the war he fought in. I remember him sitting in the kitchen, scratching and scratching his head before he went to the hospital. I sat at the living room window, watching him get into the cab, knowing he would never return. I remember this and his stories about World War II. His friend lay dead in the trenches, a grenade in his hand. He said, "Thanks, buddy," pulled the pin through it and made it home alive. Just trying to make myself shorter.
Yeah, I'm going to really want you to do that.
I usually ask that you save your energy, and also some people like to have silence in between the poems, so you don't need to clap, you can just relax and listen. And this one is a love poem called Wild Grass and Moon Pennies. The warmth of your hand on mine shelters and calms my body. The warmth of your hand on mine is a hermit crab. The bristles of your little mustache, a silver shock brushing my lips, circling electricity into my mouth. Your tongue tells me so much without words. Like the warm, shallow bath in the pristine tub you drew for me in the morning, and the bar of pink wildflower soap in the water. This is dedicated to Bob George. Last night the moon was huge, pale gold, and slipped into the pocket of the sky like a penny in a loafer. This morning our elder Bobby was standing at the edge of the road on the res as if waiting for me to drive by. It just so happened that I needed him, and he was, as always, filled with uplifting words to take away my tears, sparkling in the sun. He mends broken hearts and reminds me of a bear, soft, round, comforting. His magenta rosary beads are wrapped around his fingers like a mala. He walks and prays, walks and prays. I see him going by my house sometimes with his hands behind his back. I know he prays for me. I had to make sure none of my clients or relatives were here in the audience. It's in the second person. I had nothing to do with this whatsoever. He holds his upper lip between his lips and sucks it. Sacred nurturance. Exchanged in fluids, his tongue strokes the inside. Flames burn around the room and inside her. Her nipples, like poppies, become miniature stones between his fingers and in his mouth. Healing palms rest on her soles as he kisses her center of power, draws her to the edge of the bed. Night's intimacy wraps around their bodies, and they can speak, his hand upon her soul. She cries, burrowing gently into the embrace of this lover who had her first at 17. wrote this poem for, I do counseling, and I wrote this poem for a client of mine on the downtown east side. I used to work down there for 4 years too. And she really loved it. She worked for Peers, an organization that helps prostitutes in different ways. And she memorized the poem and stood up in front of the whole staff and read it to them. Sitting before me, your dark hair, a loose waterfall over your left shoulder. I watch as tears arise from your center, like pure water from a spring. You are remembering your mother's words, calling you a whore. When you sit before me and say that you are not beautiful, I want to remind you that you are a candle, still beaming light after all these years. You are not what happened to you. You are not the lies you were told. You are not the murder that you committed in self-defense. You are not the needles and the prostitution that you used to do. You are not the violations that others committed against the beautiful child that you were. But you are the soft, small duckling I saw walking on lotus leaves this afternoon, and the perfect yellow lotus flower beside her. And you are the bush flowers I saw with deep purple centers and delicate mauve petals like lace blossoming in the light. Another erotic poem, one of my favorites. And his too. He had a kind face shaped like the moon, and is standing in the kitchen, rolling her soft earlobes under his hot, wet tongue, kissing the back of her neck and undoing the little rayon blouse, tiny buttons all the way down. Standing behind her, his arousal hard against the crevice of her behind, dancing, there is no music, only the sound of crickets on this first night of their mating dance. In the morning, she asked if she could let down his hair. He lay on her chest, naked, as if taking the warmth of woman into this cool morning and back into the battle of his life. Loosening the band that captured his locks, she feels the sudden release of his warm, coal-black raven hair covering her naked chest. She feels protected under the kindness of it, like the medicine man's buffalo robe she lay on years ago, a kindness that brought tears of joy to her eyes. This one is also for one of my clients from the downtown east side. And I didn't know, because he didn't show a lot, how much this meant to him. But one day he told me, you know, those poems that you wrote about me, I memorized all of them. The apricot circle lays itself down on the horizon of the city of mountains meet ocean. Concrete curtains sometimes open to reveal cool sea air. Green-blue trees, white powder of mountains meet sky. I'm smiling sadly, as I sometimes do when this work takes its ironic turns, and you are counting out $100 bills on your hotel room bed, giving me the money so that you won't kill yourself smoking the white powder in your glass pipe. Your adopted father smoked another kind of pipe, but he and your adopted mother didn't know how to bring their prayers into living for too many years after residential school. You say in a tone that is both frank and embarrassed, my father was a white guy, but I don't see it anywhere except in the color of your skin as you sit with the long-limbed gracefulness of your people. Indian eyes glance as if painted with brushstrokes over fine cheekbones. Your clear forehead has tiny beads forming with the fevered look people have down here. People driving by in their fast factory cars wouldn't know that you read world religions and Carl Jung. They don't know that you carry a curled up copy of Siddhartha in your back pocket, or my now worn writing down the bones. They don't know how hard you try to pry yourself away from the craving in your brain and slip because that white powder tricks people's minds into believing they will die if they don't have it, instead of the truth, which is they will die if they do. another love poem. This is called The Strength of Your Gentleness. I am dancing on the lip of this experience, my heart a sheet of turquoise sari beating in the wind. Despite the branding pain of the past, I wouldn't even mouth the words my heart is broken. No, it isn't, I would say. It's as strong as a silk flag beating in the wind. And now my feelings for you are sending down flexible roots as quietly as Sister Mouse, but all the while growing deeper, more strongly into the earth. Like my cactus flower, blooming silently in the night, suddenly opening, pink petals caressing lime-colored stamens in her center, as sweetly as the tilt of your head, and as strongly as my grandmother's spirit galloping out of your heart. And this is a poem I wrote to someone I was interested in, but nothing ever really happened, except that a good poem came out. I'm sitting at a white table in a Thai restaurant, watching you walk by with that fluid grace that you have, pausing to stand for a moment in August's lush, mottled sunlight, the shadow of leaves dancing over your form. As you look up at the sign over the restaurant I'm in, I see the tiredness etched in lines under your eyes. Though your body has surrendered, is at ease now. Glass separates us and silences the world into this rare, precious jewel of a moment, away from your desk, away from the conflict that has burned through your life. And this is a poem about an art teacher that I had at Emily Carr, who he was my drawing teacher. I read this someplace else, and somebody came up to me afterwards and recognized him immediately, so it's really a good portrait. It's called Portrait of James. If I were to draw a portrait of James, he would be as I met him, leaning forward, rushing out of the classroom door, looking befuddled, dark sunflower hair in a shock like the Little Prince, with one shoelace undone. He would have unbelievably blue eyes, like sepia photographs that had been colored electric blue. He would wear a white shirt, thick, bright, white cotton, and it would have charcoal smudged on it, as would his face. He would have to be captured in a gesture drawing to show the energy in his form, because he never stands still. In this portrait, there would have to be curving lines to show how he would move around the room, instructing with great knowledge, humility, respect, and integrity, while fumbling over furniture and clutching in his hand a peanut butter and banana sandwich on whole grain bread. This poem is dedicated to another client of mine who passed away this past year of cancer. And I got to write this poem before she died and read it to her, and she really liked it. And I also got to read it at her memorial. So this is for Sandy. I will remember you standing in doorways, tears flowing down your face, because it was impossible to stop the relentless pull of spirit drawing you down through the transformation that will sweep you ashore on that great tide of light. I will remember you standing in doorways, your frail shell of a body wrapped around your tremendous spirit. I will remember your childhood story of being abandoned in the woods with your infant siblings and rescued by a blind woman from your community who, walking on the edge of the forest, heard you crying. Humbled again in the face of death, I am no longer your guide. Roles dropped. We are two human beings sitting in your kitchen for hours, having courageous conversation. I want to wrap you in comfort for your final journey and honor you again, as I did that night, with the eagle's feather. I want you to know that your spirit will be immortalized in mine, and I will carry your legacy out into the world. I want you to know that your spirit has touched many of ours, making us stronger, better, and bigger. And now I want to place the words release and acceptance into your hand as the strong, shifting tides draw you into their arms and lift you up to be bathed in that great light. And I asked her to come back and visit me after she left, but not to freak me out. And she did just that. It made me smile. flying around in my kitchen. This poem is dedicated to my late sister Alice Allen, and it kind of shows her character. I had often heard throughout, as I was growing up, that Tonto, meaning J. Silverheels, the first Tonto, had visited my grandmother's house, but I never really heard the story about it. So I asked her, and this is essentially what she said. So, excuse me. In memory of Alice Allen. I asked my eldest sister Alice if she remembered the story about the night Tonto came to visit Grandma's house. She said emphatically, "I was there." His girlfriend was a big, raw-boned gal, and she had a steel brace wrapped around her torso as her back was broken. Jay was feeling good. There was drinking in the kitchen and gambling in the living room of Grandma's small house on Mahara Avenue. There were lots of people there, and the money was flying that night. He was striking, not just handsome. Tall, blue-black hair, and those cheekbones. Uncle Ernie brought him and danced with Auntie Dolly, pretty Aunt Dolly. They could dance, Alice said. And when the night ended, Jay's girlfriend, who had come in the front door frontward, went out that same door backwards. I still don't understand that. Must have to do with the brace, I guess. And this is one of those last poems to my last boyfriend. Well, hopefully not the last. My body forms a light crescent on the bed. Moonlight shoots through my hip like porous whalebone dipping into the firm surface. I am aware that my consciousness is hooked into this body, but also becomes the limitless sky over this divided bed. I am the spotted shell rolling on the wet sand, turning over in the sun. The kind of shell you ask a question of and listen. Do you miss me? I listen for the answer and hear the sound of waves rolling in the night. And this is my last poem. And this is dedicated to my beautiful and only grandson, Gabriel. It's called Just As You Are. Under the glaze of the summer sun and the bell-shaped yellow flowers hanging like pendants, silent and heavy in the heat, you spread your gossamer wings like a dragonfly, floating and darting over flowers, surrounding ponds and fountains like a necklace of brilliant colors. You laugh, completely delighted that I can't reach you as you throw handfuls of pebbles into the water, then dash off to the Asian garden, where we pass an ancient Chinese woman coming out of a circular archway on the arm of her handsome white goateed son. You take no notice until we meet them again, once more, at the beginning. Her son sitting on a wooden bench in the shade. You find her resting lightly on her cane amongst the flowers. Call me over to come into the presence of your delightful discovery, then fall suddenly into a full embrace of her fragile body. She lifts frail porcelain arms, creased with lines that become gossamer wings around your little brown form, and you burst back to look into her face once more before taking flight again. That's all I have.